I'm here to disrupt everything the diet and food industry has told you for years. What if you could stop obsessing over food and weight, understand exactly what your body really needs to thrive, all while learning how to feel empowered, confident, and in control? Hey there, I'm Carrie Lapoli, a certified nutritionist, award-winning educator, behavioral specialist, international speaker, and mom of two amazing college-age daughters. I'm here to help you disrupt everything the diet industry has told you about your health and your body. So here's the truth. Sure, what we put in our bodies matters, and it's more than just nutrition. As a nutritionist and a behavioral expert, I'm uniquely qualified to marry both the science of what our bodies need along with how to change your relationship with food, and all while realizing your value. I want to help teach you to reach your health, wellness, and yes, even weight loss goals with powerful conversations, science-backed strategies, and real talk. I'll teach you how to break free from the cycle of dieting, deprivation, and self-sabotage and start truly living. No more temporary fixes here, just sustainable wellness for you, your family, and your future that no one is talking about. You were not put on this earth to find the right diet, so it's time to stop living like you were. Join me each and every week as I share practical advice, a fresh perspective on the power of mindset, and tips that empower you to live your purpose, all while still enjoying the foods you love. And yeah, that even includes carbs. So if you want something different, you have to do something different. Consider me your something different. Welcome to the Diet Disruptors Podcast. Well, hey there, Diet Disruptors. Carrie here, and this podcast is probably 15 years in the making. What we are going to talk about today is something that got me truly to where I feel like I know exactly what the healthiest version of me looks like and does and says and believes, and I am so much closer to that now than I ever was before. And two, this thing we're going to talk about today actually saved my marriage about 13 years ago. And today's podcast, we are bringing on one of literally the world's leading experts on this. Her name is Enneagram Ashton. And because she has like 500,000 followers, my guess is you might know who she is. But not only is Ashton one of the leaders in this tool called the Enneagram, she's also one of my besties. And so I'm so excited that she is here to be able to talk and just, I don't know, Ashton, this is going to be like one of my favorite podcasts because the topic we're talking about, and because it's you.
Oh, as an Enneagram 2, I just love to hear that.
Yeah, that's why I did it. I just really wanted to
I'm
fill you
so
up.
excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I am so excited that you agreed to join me. You have been on some amazing podcasts, including Glennon Doyle's, which I think, gosh, I don't know if that's the first time I heard about you, because I'm pretty sure when I went to go follow you, I realized, oh, I'm already following her. But that was huge, and I'm like, this girl knows what she is talking about. And you and I have known each other for a little while now, and so getting you on this podcast is just really making me excited because we talk all about nutrition and wellness and health. And so
Mhm.
I'd love for you to just share a little bit about why people might be wondering, okay, if Carrie talks about this, if that's her focus, why the Enneagram? How does this connect?
Yeah, so the Enneagram, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what this word is, if you have been listening to Carrie for any amount of time, you probably have heard her talk about it. But in case you haven't, the Enneagram is a personality typing system, and I actually call it an ancient typing system because it's so old. It's between 2 to 4,000 years old. It's so old that we can't actually pinpoint the exact date that it was created. And so personality typing systems in general have really assisted in wellness previously because you're really just trying to understand yourself better. you're, grasping more self-awareness, you're understanding who you are. But the difference with the Enneagram is that you're understanding your motivation. So it's actually based on your why you do something or how you do something or that motivation behind your behaviors. And so, specifically, when we're talking about health and wellness and self awareness and all of those kind of buzzwords, the Enneagram is extremely helpful because it's explaining some of those things that you do that you might question, like, why is it that I do this? Why do I continue down this path? Well, let's look at your Enneagram type's motivations and try to figure that out and learn and understand that. And so when we're talking about health and wellness as a whole, it's kind of just another piece of the puzzle that we're able to understand ourselves better. We're able to be healthier in other aspects of our lives as well.
And when we first started working together, you actually did a talk with my team because we teach the Enneagram within my private practice, Disruptive Nutrition. And you came and talked to the team and just helped our coaches to be able to coach our clients even better. And I had you go through how I teach the Enneagram, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you're gonna watch me do this. But you gave me some props, so I was like,
I liked it. I thought it was great. I was impressed.
good, good, good. But it's funny because I always say self-consciousness is a disease, but self-awareness is health. And when we're
Mhm.
constantly comparing ourselves to other people or to an earlier version of ourselves, we're constantly feeling not like we're not enough. But when we understand who we are and what we do and why we do it, that's actually self-awareness, which leads to so much more health. And
Mhm.
people are always like, Carrie, just give me a meal plan. And I'm like, no, we need to actually go on a journey of self-discovery. And the Enneagram is
Yeah.
that. And it's funny because you as a two, and we'll get into what that means. Um, as we're all on a health journey, right? But as you and I have talked a lot about your own health journey, it's so easy to say, well, I have to put everybody else, like I have to take care of my family, I have to take care of my husband, my siblings, my parents, whatever it is. And there's always a reason not to take care of yourself when you're a two, like
Mhm.
you. Would you agree?
Yeah. Literally the whole 30 minutes prior to this podcast episode was me being very in my two-ness, and I didn't even realize it
Yeah.
until this
But
very minute. We're all on a journey.
yeah, and what I love about the Enneagram is that it's a set of these nine numbers, right? And I like to believe, as a woman of faith, that maybe it's so ancient, it's so old that maybe it came from God, and that the idea of like maybe God is all of these numbers and we're a part of that. But at the end of the day, I don't even go down that faith-based route with it because it's just so powerful for everyone, and I don't want that to be a barrier. But when we look at these nine numbers, and we'll have you help us explore them, it allows us to just recognize the worth that each one of us has. No number is better or worse than another. When my daughter started exploring this, I gave her a few resources and she figured out that she was a four, a romantic creative, which
Mhm.
drives me a little crazy as an eight. But she looked
Yeah.
at me and she goes, you mean there's nothing wrong with me? And when you realize that there's nothing wrong with it, that you're perfect exactly the way you are, but this is a tool and a roadmap to help you become the best version of yourself, you suddenly look at yourself and show up for yourself differently. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think so many people feel like they're kind of what you were saying, like they're the only ones that do something this way, or they're the only ones who think this way. And when you really try to or start to see that other people are like you and think the way that you do, it makes you feel less alone, right? And that it like kind of those light bulbs start to go off, and you're like, oh, wow, like
Yes.
this makes so much sense. That's like what I say with the Enneagram as like as a whole. I say, well, it just causes us to be able to say that makes sense. It makes sense why I think this way. It makes sense why other people do things the way that they do
Yes.
them. Like it makes sense once you understand your Enneagram type.
It really does. It's when my coaches really understand, they can coach better because they understand more of their clients' motivations and, not just
Yeah.
what they do, but why they do it. But I want to share very quickly how it saved my marriage because my husband and I will be
Yeah.
married 25 years this year. And about 12 years ago, we went through, like all marriages do, a bit of a rough patch. We had moved a lot in our marriage. And, I felt like I was always like, running after him or following him. And as an eight, I now know like I had a lot of lack of control in a lot of what we were experiencing and all the moves that we did. But my husband is a two, just like you, which means he's a helper. He will literally give the shirt off of his back. And if I'm
Mhm.
feeling good, I help all day long. It's what I do. And I'm confident and I feel good. But that's not like my innate. Like my innate go-to is be like, I need the shirt, but I'm gonna like I'll help you go figure out how to get your own shirt. I'm just not giving you
Yeah.
my shirt, right? And Peter, growing up, his siblings called him Perfect Peter. And they used to get so annoyed with him because what I realized as being a wife of this two that was like always helping others was that I always felt like I wasn't enough. And I was always trying to be more like Peter. How do I be more like Peter? And it was like fitting a round peg in a square hole. I just couldn't be as good as he was. And it just caused a
Mhm.
lot of kind of relationship issues within us. And when I started reading about the Enneagram, and right away I knew I was an eight. An eight is a challenger. And Nate can be a leader, they can be inspirational, but like they can be assertive, right? And they have need for control. And usually you can I can like seek out an eight like that. I
Oh
feel like
yeah. Well, you can like sense their energy, I feel like.
Mhm. And I always say don't never take a test for the Enneagram. I feel like it's a journey of self-discovery and reading your book and reading about it helps you get there in a more authentic way. But I feel like eights do usually test out to be pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Don't think
They're
the
the
Enneagram.
ones that like tests aren't always that accurate, but for eights, it's pretty
That's
accurate.
what I've
That's
learned.
really
I'm an eight, no matter
great.
what test I take. But as I was
Yeah.
reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder I can't be more like Peter. I'm an eight. And for the first time, I just felt like, oh, this is me. And I had a roadmap because in the Enneagram, you have a healthy version, an average version, an unhealthy version. And for many, many years, I was sitting in the unhealthy version. But now it was like, oh my gosh, I have value. I'm not supposed to be more like him. I'm supposed to be like me. And when he started exploring it, I thought he was a nine, like a peacemaker, but he read it and he was like, I am not a nine, I am a two. And it was so eye
Wow.
eye opening, not to diagnose other people, let them figure it out. But when he realized he was a two, and I realized I was an eight, we could work together in such a better way. And when an eight is in a healthy place, they become more like a two. And so we
Yeah.
know now when we're in stress and when we're in health, and because we know each other's Enneagram so well, it helps us to be more synergistic with each other.
Yeah. I love that.
It's
I'm
pretty
so
cool.
glad. I mean, those are like the stories that I just love so much because it really is the power of the Enneagram. Like it sounds cheesy, but it really can change like every aspect of your life.
Yeah, and you literally have written the book on it. I love your book because it literally is the Enneagram made simple. And so tell us, just help us get an understanding of what these numbers are all about, how kind of things fit together, and how does somebody go about figuring out their number? I want to just preface this. If you've ever heard of the Enneagram, and you must hear this all the time. Oh, I've heard of that. Or, oh yeah, I did the test once and I could, and they blow it off. And I want to encourage people. I don't care how long you've been studying the Enneagram. It is so multi-layered, and you can just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper in this knowledge of who you are and be so much more self-aware of where others are coming from. So don't blow this off like you already know it, because this is not like a Myers-Briggs. That's, I feel like,
Yeah.
a simpler kind of a tool. This is really deep. So I think we're only going to be able to scratch the surface now, and going in deeper from this, I think, is essential.
hmm I also want to encourage you to, there are certain people who will say things to me like, I don't want to be labeled, or I don't want to
Mm.
be put in a box, or like I'm more than just a number. And like absolutely, like I agree. It's actually Ian Morgan Crone says like we aren't trying to put you in a box by utilizing the Enneagram. We're showing you how to get out of the box that you have already put yourself in. But knowing these things about your type can help you to live fully into who you are, the healthiest version of yourself, whatever that looks like for you.
It's totally
So I'd like to,
yeah.
yeah,
Unapologetically. We gave you
unapologetically.
we give your shirt. It says
Yes, I wore
bold,
it the other
balanced,
day.
and beautiful. And on the sleeve, it says unapologetically me. And I wanted you to have that shirt because I just felt like once we know ourselves better, and the Enneagram is such an amazing tool to do that, we can be unapologetic about who we are and not have to feel like we have to fit into a certain, like you said, box.
Today's episode is brought to you by Zyve 7. It is time to awaken your digestion because your gut health relies on you. Everything is attached to our gut. And if our gut ain't happy, ain't nothing in our body happy. And if you are a woman who is also going through menopause, your gut health is more important than ever before. Zyve 7 is a finely tuned symphony of gut health for your daily ritual, blending nature's intelligence with scientific precision. And I have had the honor of being able to work on this product myself. So I know exactly where all the ingredients are sourced from and why the ingredients are that powerful. It is not only a digestive enzyme, but it also has protective probiotics, enzymes, prebiotics. It is your first step to improve your gut health, banish your bloating, smooth sailing every day with regularity, and stay consistent with your blood sugar levels. Go check out shopzyve.com now.
All right, so let's school us, Enneagram
Yeah,
Ashton.
so like you said, there are 9 different types. So I like to preface this by saying that I like to describe them as 9 lenses because we're all viewing the world differently based on the lens of our type. Because, like I said, it's about your motivation. So, your biggest fears and your biggest desires. It's not really about your behaviors. Are there stereotypical behaviors associated with the types? Absolutely. But when it comes down to it, it is primarily based on your biggest fears and your biggest desires. So,
Because
9
there's
different lenses.
behaviors that can look very similar on all the numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you some examples too in a little bit. But so for example, like you're an 8, I'm a 2. We're going to view the world differently based on who we are, our types, etc. A way that I like to explain this is by just pretending that you have different colored glasses on. So let's say you're wearing green colored glasses. I'm, as a 2, wearing blue colored glasses. We could be viewing a similar situation, a relationship, a problem, like whatever that looks like, just viewing it different based on our type.
Mhm.
So, like I said, your types are made up of your biggest fear and your biggest desire. So, I'm going to go through all 9 and the motivations just to give you a clear
I
understanding
love
of
that.
what they
I'd love to
are.
just say this too, though. What you're making me think about with these different color lenses is that it becomes like it's my truth, right? It's green. It's green. It's
Mhm.
green. It becomes my
Yeah,
truth. And then the
right.
blue is your truth. And that's where it's like truth is just sort of like a perspective in so many ways. And if we could
Right.
recognize that you
Yep.
have blue glasses, like I just feel like how much better could the world be if it's like, okay, you're seeing it from your perspective, which is very true for you. And I'm seeing it
Hmm.
from mine, which is true for me. And like that truthiness is what I call it,
Yeah.
is something just to be aware of. So we can, I
Well,
don't know.
let's say, like with the analogy, you could, let's say that you're looking at a situation and it looks blue to you, and you're like, that's wrong. That's wrong. Like it
Mm,
needs to be green,
yeah,
right? But then the 2 is coming in and looking at the situation and thinking, like, no, that's right. That's
yeah,
right, because it matches my perspective.
yeah.
And so just understand, just that basic understanding of the way that I view the world is going to be different than the way that you view the world. And really, like, how much better would our world be if we could really just have that simple understanding?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's keep going.
Okay, so the 1 is the reformer. Their biggest desire is to be seen as a good person, to be moral, ethical, right, to do the right thing. Their biggest fear then is being wrong, making mistakes, being seen as a bad person, unethical, etc.
So my
I
daughter
also want to say,
is
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Um, I also want to say that the names that I use for the types come from the Enneagram Institute. That's just the way that I was trained.
Mhm.
But there are so many different kind of like titles or headings that people use, and they all mean the same thing. It's just really personal preference.
And I think it's interesting about
Um,
the one because it used to be considered called the perfectionist, but there was such a negative
yes.
connotation on that. And it's so true that no number is worse than another. They're all amazing and perfect and beautiful. And we don't want when people say they're perfectionistic, it comes out as negative, and that's not what we want people to be able to have,
And
right?
one thing that I noticed about ones too is some ones would say, well, I don't feel like I am a perfectionist.
Mm,
And the thing about perfectionism, it's really a behavior, right? So, they would assume that if people would assume that if they were afraid of making mistakes, right, then they must be a perfectionist.
yes,
But when people aren't perfectionists, it's really what is right to them,
yes,
right? And so is perfectionism the way that they kind of work in the world?
yep. Well,
Yes, or
and
maybe not.
as an example, as an eight, I like to feel like I'm in control. And so I
Hmm.
actually was like, am I a one? Am I an eight? Just for like a hot second. Because I do have like this tendency to feel like I need things in a certain like way. But it really has to do with control. It's the motivation. I have a brother-in-law who's a six. And when you get to six, we can talk more about that. But there's a fear based with him of getting it wrong, right?
Hmm.
And that he's not necessarily good enough. And so again, to that point of the motivation is so, so, so important.
Right. And it's why, back to our thoughts on tests, right?
Hmm.
It's why tests are difficult because you're really answering questions based on your behaviors, right? So I'm sure that there are tests that have questions about perfectionism.
Yeah.
And so then they would automatically lump people into the Enneagram 1 if they answered that they struggle with perfectionism, but they're not really asking those clarifying questions of, well, why do you struggle with perfectionism? Is it
Yeah.
fear-based? Is it because you want other people to like you? Is it because you want to seek control? Like there are so many different motivations based on the types.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And my daughter as a one in so many ways, like I've had to say to her a few times, like done is better than perfect. But
Mhm.
also the quality of work with her is really incredible. We also have a coach who's a one, and I know I can rely. I love tapping into people's zone of genius. And like whenever we publish something or whenever we like put something out to our audience, I'm like, hey, could you look this over for us? Because I know she has such an amazing attention to detail that I miss.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of the Enneagram is being able to tap into those strengths based on your type.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. All right, so now there's the two, yeah?
Two is the helper. So their biggest desire is to feel loved and wanted, appreciated, needed. And then their biggest fear is all of the opposite of that. So feeling unloved, unwanted, not needed, not appreciated for the things that they're doing. So then their behaviors will kind of reflect back on making sure that they feel loved and wanted.
So what does that look like if you're a two with those behaviors?
Mm.
Not that you know anything about it.
Really causing me to look deep inside.
Hmm.
Um, so, twos get a bad reputation sometimes with helping others only to receive something in return, even if it's like a token of appreciation. And so, really, when I do work with Enneagram twos, it's a lot about having that heart check of like, do you actually want to be doing this thing? Or are you hoping that it will reflect back on you if you do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's where the healthy and the unhealthy kind of come in,
right.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
why are you doing it? It can look the same, but if you're doing it for, that, I love the word heart check. Like if you check your
Yeah.
heart in that, you
Mhm.
can kind of see where you are if you're leaning more towards that
Yeah.
unhealthy too.
But twos are, really compassionate. They're caring, they're kind, they're very, generous with their time, their energy, their resources. Also, a lot of people know that about them, right? And so they have to really stay firm to their boundaries. What are they willing to do? What are they not willing to do? Um, and yeah, you probably know it too. if you're like thinking about this and you're like, oh, this sounds like that person, like they're also pretty obvious to see.
Yeah. I would agree with you. And living with the two, I see it all the time, and it's hard in so many ways because you choose just, especially when you're a healthier version of it, it's like it's so much for everybody else that, when you think about like, gosh, what do I need? Like, Peter will often say, okay, what can I do better? What do I need to work on? And sometimes it's just that I'm like, sometimes you have to let other people help you. Like,
Mhm.
he has a really hard time letting other people help him, and he'll sit on like the corner of like a curb with no coat, and somebody will come around to try to pick him up or give him a coat, and he's like, no, it's fine. I
Yeah.
I don't need your help. And somebody once said to my husband, you need to let other people be a blessing for you. Like, let
Mhm.
you get so much out of helping others, but you don't let other people help you, and you're robbing them of that joy. And that stuck with him a lot.
It's like weirdly uncomfortable for to
Mm,
let other people help them. Like even we just had the flu for 2 weeks, and I had a couple people bring us meals, which was super helpful. But I like really had a difficult time being like, yes, you can do that.
yeah.
And it's like so dumb, right? Because I would do that for them, and
Right.
like I wouldn't want them to fight me on it or anything like that. But it is like totally in their heads of feeling like they're undeserving. A lot of the work for an Enneagram too is increasing confidence on their worth and their value.
Oh, I love that. I love that because again, we only actually achieve what we do based on the level of self-worth that we have. It's
Mhm.
really hard to achieve higher than what we believe we are worthy of.
Yep.
And gosh, I just know that each one of us are here in this on this world for a purpose, and what a shame it would be to not be able to serve that purpose because our own belief in ourselves is not as high as it should be. So I love that. All right. Threes are such an interesting number. And so I'm really interested to see how you describe threes.
Yeah. Threes are also another number that struggles with their value sometimes.
Yeah.
Twos, threes, and fours, which we can talk about. But so threes are the achiever. So their biggest desire, this is probably no surprise, but they want to achieve, right? So they want to be successful and they want to be seen as successful, but then they also want to be seen as competent and capable and respected because of that success or what they're doing.
Hmm.
And then the biggest fear tends to be failure. So they fear failure the most, but then they also fear kind of being disrespected or being seen as incompetent or incapable of getting the job done. So
Hmm.
they're very like results focused, achievement driven, goal oriented, motivated. But where they can get in trouble is tying their value into what they're doing and what they're achieving and what they're succeeding. And then if they don't do that, then they feel like they don't have any worth or purpose or things like that.
Isn't that so interesting where our that worthiness of ourselves, for so many people, I think it's in what we look like, it's in what we do, it's in how we identify ourselves versus innately understanding that just because we are here, we have value.
Mhm.
And I see that with threes. I see this right where there's a lot of threes tend to be entertainers. Like,
Yeah.
I know Taylor Swift is a three, for example.
Yeah, there's some conversation about that. Some people think
Okay.
she's a, but I think she's definitely a three.
Okay.
Anybody who's like really just high achieving
Mhm.
is going to be a three. But the entertaining piece is because threes can be very charismatic.
Mm.
They can be very social. They can kind of chameleon themselves into who they need to be, depending on the group that they're in. I mean,
Okay.
I could talk about Taylor Swift literally all day long, but think about how she acts and like behaves when she's with the football,
Yep.
world
Yep.
versus, who she is when she's on stage and who she is when she's with her friends. Like you can just tell that She kind of can chameleon herself when she needs to.
Well,
But
that's
yeah,
interesting
pretty
to
much.
thinking about really that next number of four, because all of these numbers sit next to another number, and those are called wings. And so I read that Taylor Swift is a three-wing four. Um, and my daughter is a four-wing three, which just sort of means you kind of lean a little more towards that number. Am I right? Like, so you
Yeah.
have your number, and then you're just leaning a little bit towards one of the other numbers next to you.
Yeah. You really take on more of like the behavior
Mm,
characteristics
okay.
of your wing. So like I'm a two with a three wing. And
Yeah.
so to a lot of people, this is a whole another point here is that sometimes we can't type other people because what we are seeing are behaviors and we're not seeing the underlying motivations of people unless they're having those conversations, of course.
Right.
But when I first discovered the Enneagram and was, talking to my close family and friends about it, they were like, "You're a three, you're 100% a three." Like my behaviors look very three, but
Mhm.
my motivations stay with the two, which like nobody would really know unless we're having conversations about it.
Yeah. And that's
Walking
where like
around being like, "Just love me."
right, it's innate, right? Like that, and that's why
Yeah.
getting to know yourself is so important so that you really truly can be unapologetically you. That's where the
Yeah.
four comes in as we move over to the four. I refer to them as the romantic creative. How do you refer
The
to them?
individualist
Okay,
is
yeah.
the name that I typically use, but really they're just so focused on like individuality. And
Hmm.
that's because and creativity and those things, but it's because their biggest desire is to be seen as unique or special or individualized or to be set apart, a little bit different. Their biggest fear, though, is that something is inherently wrong with them, that they're defective, they're missing something that other people tend to have. So they get stuck in comparison sometimes.
So you can imagine
Um,
why when Grace, my four,
yeah.
read about being a four and she said, "Oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong with me," right? Like that was such a relief to
Yeah.
her. But she's also a creative. She's a performer. She's a musical theater major. Like
Right.
she's a songwriter. She feels so deeply.
Mhm.
Like the empath in her, like she can literally feels like she can feel other people's feelings. As me as an eight, empathy is very hard for me. So the two of us, but that's where the Taylor Swift conversation comes in, right? Because
Yeah.
she gets really deep into her own creative
Mhm.
soul around her songwriting. And Grace is a four-wing three, and she just exhibits all those qualities of being that individualist, but also getting herself stuck sometimes in her own thinking about that there's something wrong with her. And
Yeah.
knowing the Enneagram and studying it as much as I have has helped me help her in ways that I don't know that any just regular therapist could have. She also has
Right.
ADHD, and I feel like she's really struggled to figure out who she is. And that's why the Enneagram also helped me be so much of a better parent.
Mhm. Yeah. Because you're understanding like them in a different area, right? Like you're understanding them on a different level, so to speak. Like you're
Hmm.
not just looking at them as who they are. You're looking at them and truly understanding like what makes them think a certain way or
Yeah.
what makes them behave a certain way. And I think that just is really powerful.
Yeah. And she's coachable too. So she's like taking some of the things that I say and she's like reframing some of her truths as um something more empowering.
And
So
fours are the most emotional type. Like they're the type that is the most in tune with their emotions and
mm,
with other people's emotions. And it's because, again, back to that motivation of they feel, period. They feel, period.
yes,
They
feel.
also feel like, if they are in tune with their emotions, that makes them who they are, that makes them unique, that makes them authentic, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you can probably imagine why, as an eight, it's sort of like when I learned how to eat in the way that I teach, right? PFC 3 years and years and years ago. I was like, okay, good. I'm good. Like now the emotions were out of it and I had an eating disorder, but it was just like bam, bam, bam. I know what to do now. So when I started teaching women, and I was a behavior specialist, but I didn't know the Enneagram at that time, right?
Yeah.
I was just like, well, I'm teaching you. Why aren't we doing it? Like you know how to do it. Every single woman fell off.
Mhm.
And as I started to explore the Enneagram and realize, oh my gosh, I need to have a better perspective of this because me as an 8 doesn't, I don't fall into the emotion trap, which is why I can often be seen as someone who doesn't care, even though I do care deeply. Um, and Grace cares so much and feels so much. And then she can be a roller coaster where sometimes she just can't stick with certain things because she makes decisions based on feelings. And
Yeah.
so when I could understand that more, it allowed me to teach women how to eat and how to actually be the healthiest version of themselves in a way that I never could have done. I don't think without the Enneagram because I was sitting in my own green lens.